The Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, or on X, you're on our live streams. And KTN, good morning to our audience as you join us on the first conversation for this week. And on radio around the country, the region, and indeed around the world. These are the conversations that we have every day that matter, asking the questions that need to be asked, eliciting to the responses that Kenyans and the world needs. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And as we get into it, we have our guest already seated this hour. Kivutha Kibwana is a lecturer at the Daystar University School of Law. And you wonder why we're only giving him that title. Well, okay. Obviously, he's done a lot more than that. And we actually referenced you in a conversation that we had between 6 and 7 o'clock. And we'll probably get into that a little bit more. But, Prof, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here.
Karibu sana. Good to have you here in the room again. And I said we referenced you earlier because we were talking about, when you see that things are falling apart, when you see that things are not working, you can either decide to remain part of the whole melee, or you can decide, you know what, let's collapse everything and let's build it again. And that was the reference that we had to you in terms of what happened with, Makwene County and the assembly, the county assembly. So we're getting into an interesting conversation this hour because there's so many balls up in the air at the same time. And we're asking questions about, where do we go from here? But even as we do that, we welcome you into the Situation Room again. And CT has gone to a different African country this week. He will tell you what today's proverb is, and we would love to hear your insights about that.
Yes, we are in the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. It's an interesting country in this respect. I mean, historically, the people who lived in Algeria are the people we refer to as Berbers. But then there were several migrations of Arabs into that particular region. But even before then, Phoenicians, Romans, all manner of people, Vandals, had actually somehow crisscrossed into that particular region. So there was an interesting mixture. But even as the Arabs and the wave of Arabs came in, the French also came into their brand of colonization. The Italians came, the Spaniards came. But many people don't understand this. By the same token, in earlier times, Africans had also lived in Spain. Africans had also lived in Italy. And there's a lot of civilization in many of those parts of the world that are actually African in origin.
Yes.
So it's just how human beings have interacted over time. Algeria is an interesting country, typical of the interests that African countries have in this respect. What we remember and what we speak of now is the legacy of colonialism and what it is that it bequeathed to this particular country and how it affects the things that go on in the country. And I think the proverbs that come from every country more or less speak to a lot of the things in very brief summary of the things that the country has or what it is that is a reflection of their culture. The proverb for today: the one whose belly is full of straw is not afraid of fire. The person whose belly is not full of straw is not afraid of fire.
Okay. I was just wondering how a belly could be full of straw, so that one is afraid of fire.
Yes.
But I would imagine if you have not done things that necessarily you think can hurt you, particularly if they come to the limelight, then you wouldn't be afraid. But if you have done things that, you don't want people to know, so you don't go near them, you don't want it revealed because that can hurt you.
Yes.
But it's a very, very interesting proverb because one would not know how you would get, straw
in your belly.
Or tied to your belly. Maybe tied to your belly, I don't know.
Consider consumption in its broadest possible way. It doesn't necessarily mean the physical eating,
yes,
which eventually what you consume ends up in your belly.
Yes.
But it is what you partake of, what you're part of.
What you may have done.
Yes.
What you have done.
Yes. When you say, I feel it in my belly,
yes,
it's it's or I feel fear in my chest.
Yes.
How exactly does fear land itself on your in your belly or on your chest? How does that happen? It's a metaphorical way of speaking, but it speaks to, and you were spot on. There are certain tender things that you would rather not have spoken of. And so you avoid situations where they might come to light.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Deep.
Quite.
Yes.
Quite. And speaking of deep, it seems that with very many things, day after day, it seems the depth of the matters that Kenya is in continues. When we look at what's going on with governance, when we look at the public outcry, when we are in a place where many questions are being asked about alliances that have been made, or people who were part of a government who made Kenyans think that things were going in a certain direction, have come out in their numbers to talk about the fact that, government is not doing what it said it should do, or what it said it would do, or what it should do. So one starts to wonder that if you had one person, Prof, coming out to say that, okay, things are not all right, then perhaps you would think that, okay, maybe it was just one person. But when you have person after person, I think we're doing an average of about a person per month now, coming out to talk about the fact that things are not doing all right, then one must wonder in which direction is the country headed. And there are many more examples of what we see. I mean, what can we not call on? We saw in the western part of the nation just the other week that we see another possible religious cult. And then the weekend has not come to an end, and we see a possible other one at the coast again. And we see alcohol abuse all over the place. We see people killing women. We can go on and on. We see overdependency on drugs. We see Kenya's debt shooting through the roof and us taking more and more. And we have to ask the question, where are we headed?
Well, I think what you have described is obviously very worrying. And when, for example, one addresses the question of people who are in government and they leave, and then they are, as the expression says, spilling the beans, you ask yourself, does this portend of like almost a collapse? Because these are people in the know. And so when they come out and, maybe within a short time, somebody else comes out, it's like they're running away from a house that is burning. And that, therefore, should, worry us. Of course, the question is asked, some of the things that they're saying, how come they couldn't say them before? But the rejoinder is, well, they're saying them. And so you have simply to ask yourself, is this true or not true? But of course, ordinarily, again, if you are in the public space, you're supposed to commit yourself to some, Official Secrets Act and stuff. Therefore, there are certain things, you don't say, but we are living in different times. It's not those times when people died with secrets and stuff. But I think the upshot of that first question is, if I was in charge of this country, I would be worried. Because it means that anything that, you do will always come to light, because there are people who will say it, and because they have been with you, then we believe them. That's what they're saying in terms of the corruption, in terms of what, it's a fact. But what is even more worrying is the other picture you painted, a desperation in the country of, people thinking that it's only God who can help them. And of course, those who are the religious leaders of those cults exploit the people, because the people are very, very desperate. The children or the young people, like in the universities, you get kids who are not able to afford food. You get, very, very desperate situations. And so the alcohol, the mental, health questions. So I think it comes to a situation where you you ask what should be done. It's almost like a country needing somebody to some real spiritual person to come and say, you're in trouble and we need to, exercise. I don't know, you need to do some serious stuff. But the country is definitely not doing well. And therefore, we must ask, when you reach a point like this, maybe with even looming inability to pay our debts, our public debts, health situation being very difficult for most people, how do you reverse it? And therefore, how does the leadership that has committed to take care of us, how does it provide a solution? Because it's almost like they're getting to a situation where they don't know what the solutions can be.
Is it that bad? Is it really that bad? And many would say, well, these are normal things that happen. Every now and then you get into a rut, you can't pay your debt. Every now and then the things that you plan to do wouldn't really work. And at least it's the at least mentality that there are some nations that are in a total complete funk. But here Kenya is at least able to make it by. You can stumble down the slope, but you'll make it to the end at the end of the day. Is it that bad, or are we sometimes getting to the place where it feels good to continue to commiserate over things?
I think it's bad because, like, in this space where I am now, I have occasion to take a border, to take a taxi, and those people tell you that in a day when they ferry many people from one place to the other, nobody tells them that they like what's happening. They feel that they have economic ability. They feel safe. They feel their public services, both at the county level and the national level. So I think that interaction with a lot of people tells me that the situation is quite bad. And, sometimes we can live in a fool's paradise thinking that this is normal. And until now, something happens and then there is a real collapse. And that's my fear.
Now, Prof, you see, we live in very interesting times in this country, because here we talk in terms of the government seems as though it does not know what to do. Pretty much it is so much to handle, yet the responsibility of taking care of 55 million Kenyans lies squarely on them. We talk in terms of debt of the country. We are at 11 trillion shillings, which is way above what has even been stipulated in terms of our ceiling. It continues to go high, yet every other trip outside, the government is still borrowing. And it is a government that said, we will not borrow some more, we will fix the debt crisis in the country. Which begs the question, who should Kenyans look up to? Because at the end of the day, Kenyan will go back to the government and say, you told us to fix it, you need to fix it. But if we don't know where to go, then what's left for us in this country?
I think the question that you've raised of debt, public debt, is again extremely worrying because we are told that when the government gets like 100 shillings, it uses 70 to pay debt, and it has 30 left for the national government salaries and for development, for the counties. So there isn't anything really left for development. And when you ask government for development, it's like you're milking a stone. Because, after most of the money going to the first charge, which is the debt, then there is hardly anything left. And I remember in the one-party era, in the 80s and a bit of the 90s, the economy was so depressed and the government was really unable to supply services, supply, development to the people. And so they go back to like the ladies, the merry-go-rounds. The church was very, when there are hospitals and schools and so on, you could rely. So that actually you went out of relying on the public space, so that you rely on yourself. And, today going to that situation where people, just decide the government can't help me, therefore, I'm just going to help myself. Of course, because some money goes to the counties may try to do something, but again, even there, they pay 70% salaries and, going out benchmarking and so on, and 30% for development. So you get to a space where you're asking, who will, help you when you don't have money to go to the hospital, you don't have, school fees and so on. And that's why the young people, I think, get angry. And they say, we have a government which is supposed to help us. We have problems like those who are in the universities, paying the school fees and so on. And therefore, people begin to come onto the streets. And, one really hopes that because we are approaching June, one would ask, can again young people say nothing has been sorted out? So actually, that question of, if the government cannot do what the government should do for you, what do you do? Do you say, okay, we wait 2027 and we look for another government? And even that other government, what guarantee is there that the debts, they are going to deal with them so that we can get a reprieve? So I think it's a difficult question.
But Prof, I have to ask this question because it seems to be the question we keep asking all the time with reference to our country. Whether it is the county governments or the national government, how do you determine whether the leadership, either the national level or the county level, are determined to actually bring about the change that they know the people need? Because everyone talks about and they impute sincerity in wanting to ensure that the citizenry get a fair shake of it. But that seems to be the beginning and the end of that particular story, because one doesn't see the manifestation of even the 30% that remains. If we were to look at it in terms of figures and ask what they could do, even that we have difficulties determining where it is that money went and if it actually did what was said it would do. Because how do you budget? How do you set aside money for projects, engage people to do these projects, they complete the projects, and you don't pay them, but you budgeted for it, money was put aside? And we have a situation where what we call pending bills continuously increasing. Monies which are colossal in amount and which, if we're in the economy, would bring about change. And this is money owed to citizens.
I think the problem is legally, you are not supposed to authorize anything which is not the budget. It's a crime.
Yes.
Under Kenyan law. Yes. So that if you give me a job, if I'm a contractor and you give me a job and there is no budget for that job, someone should take you to court, whoever you are. But of course, we don't necessarily follow, those laws. And even this idea that you can legally contract somebody and then at the end of when they have finished their job, you don't pay them and you don't feel nothing. Or even the idea that before you can pay them, they need to give you some kickback. Or before even they get the job, they need to pay for the job. They buy the job. You see, this is really some of the culture which is taking us back and back and back all the time. Because sometimes the people who, like us, when we get into government, and I have my own private company, I run it well. I order things, I pay for them. I'm very strict with the people who work, in that company. And so I do the good thing in my private space. But when I come to the public space, I don't think that I should, use the same strategy to really do good. So it is this thinking that when you go to the public space, you are just going there to advantage yourself.
Yeah.
And if it's a whole team, which is doing these things, and when you do even if you are caught or you are suspected, they protect each other. So really, it's a culture that we must shed off, because if we don't, we'll continue going into the hole.
What really happens, though, Prof? And I think we often ask the question that very few individuals do we see who would say that they were one person going in, remain the same person going in. That whether we like it or not, that government is the driver of economic activity. It is the driver of economic development. It is the driver of security. It is the driver of insurance that your people are fed, healthy, and thriving. We can try to say that it's everybody's collective responsibility, fine. But at the end of the day, the one that will make sure that these things happen is government. To ensure that there are systems in place and that these systems are working, it is a government function. We know this. But for some reason, when we don't see the action that should follow the function. And we often ask ourselves, what is the problem? What happens? Whereby we have beautiful plans. You talked about benchmarking. It happens. There are countries who come here from West Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa, come to Kenya, as an example, to benchmark. But the implementation of these things doesn't happen. And we talk about the money not being there, but for some reason the money is there for other things. So what really happens to people, and what happens to that activity which we would imagine that they would engage in when they get there? What really goes wrong?
I think a fundamental question is, what is our concept of government? Because the way you have described what should be done is the correct way of, doing government. But if people get into government because they know, or they have heard, or they think that you go there to enrich yourself, then they will not do the correct thing. Because just like I tried to point out, if it was your own enterprise, you're very methodical in terms of making it work so that you can be prosperous. But when we get into the government, we don't have that concept of how do you work, probably with some exceptions, on the continent. Sometimes we talk about Kibaki as somebody who, felt that when people gave him leadership, he should, arudishe mkono, he should do something about it. But I think even from the political parties, sometimes when you want to go through a political party to be elected, sometimes you're told, you need to give some money. And even after you're elected, some political parties will still tell you that every month, some money is needed. So even these political parties, first of all, in terms of choosing people, it's not on the basis of a thorough interview. Do you understand, what this party is about? Do you understand, if you want to be MCA, what you do as MCA? Do you understand all those things? No. Sometimes it's maybe you have the money, maybe you control a certain constituency, and therefore you will get votes for your party. So we choose badly because we don't seem to have a criteria. As, for example, political parties and even the people themselves, because they will say, okay, this person is from our clan, this person is from our tribe, and even when that person doesn't deliver, next time, this person is still from our tribe, from our clan, this person has given us some money, even when they give you, they give you 500 bob, and then they go away. You see, so I think we need to really talk about what is our concept of government. What does the government do? What do we tell people will do? And to be sure that we can be asked, but you haven't done, what you promised us. So I think it's a fundamental issue of, if you really asked some of the people who are in power, what are you in power for? All right. They might think it's a rude question. Why do you ask that? They are in power because they have been elected and they know what to do, but they will not. Do it
if it's not in their own interest.
It is not in their own interest because they want to do something for themselves.
Of course. Let's take a break at this point because now we're getting into it. Then the question then becomes, in which way? In which way then should the country go? We'll come back and look at some more of those questions that we have. Professor Kivutha Kibwana is in the studio with us this morning, and we're looking at, all right, Kenya, which way as we're heading into the future? It's 29 minutes to 8 o'clock. This conversation continues after this.
In the dance of shadows.